Garden Basics with Farmer Fred is brought to you by Smart Pots, the original lightweight, long-lasting fabric plant container. It's made in the USA. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information and a special discount. That's smartpots.com/Fred. Welcome to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. If you're just a beginning gardener or you want good gardening information, well, you've come to the right spot. If you have a pollinator-friendly garden, you have all sorts of beautiful flowering plants. Well, why not bring some of that outdoor splendor indoors? Today on the Garden Basics podcast, the appropriately named horticulture professor, Debbie Flower, offers tips on how best to harvest and prepare cut flowers for an indoor display. And for those of you living in colder climates, you just might have some backyard chickens. Well, how are you going to keep them warm this winter? Chicken expert Nicole Janetta of Heritage Acres Market in Colorado has some tips. And as a retired firefighter, she has some very important tips on keeping your chickens and your property from becoming, shall we say, barbecued due to heat lamp issues, and how to keep your chickens' water from freezing in the cold months ahead. It's episode 52 of the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, brought to you by Smart Pots. And we're going to do it all in under 30 minutes. Let's go. We always like to welcome Debbie Flower to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. We like to answer questions and offer quick tips. And a quick tip, Debbie, picking flowers. When is the best time to pick flowers that they will last the longest in the house? And how should you cut them? And what should you do? Should you have a sink outside?
Well, number one, the best time to pick them is in the morning because that's when they have the most sugar in them. Plants make sugar in their green parts, and then it has to travel to the other parts, like the roots and the flowers that aren't green. And it takes time for that to happen, and a lot of that happens overnight. So in the morning, as early as possible, they are as full of sugar as they're going to be. And it's also cool, so the rate at which the plant is doing other things, like using that sugar up, is very slow. So you go out in the morning, take a nice clean cutting device. I use pruning shears. Sometimes I use scissors if the stems are soft enough for that. And I always take a container of water with me and cut longer than I think I'm going to want to use it indoors, longer than I think it's going to be needed for the vase, and put it in the water immediately. If I'm collecting something that has a daisy-type center, I want to find the flowers that where the daisy center is completely one color, or there's just a rim of yellow close to the petals, and the center of that daisy is maybe a slightly different color. The center of a daisy flower is a whole bunch of other flowers, and they open from the outside in. And so if the flower is newly open, the first flowers in the center of the daisy to open will be on the outside rim. Cut them with a nice sharp cut, put them in my water, bring them in the house. I like to have floral preservative. You buy that at there are a number of places, but it's called floral preservative. It's a powder. The label tells you how much powder to put in, how much water. Mix it up, put that in the vase. And then when I'm going to put the flowers into the vase, I take them out of the water I had outside, estimate how tall I want them. If possible, have a couple inches of water in a bucket or in the sink and submerge the stem under that water, cut the new length, and then as fast as I can put it into the floral preservative in the vase. That prevents something that is called embolism. An embolism is an air bubble in the plumbing of the plant. And some flowers it isn't a big problem, but in other flowers it is, and it can shorten the life of the plant. So picking in the morning when it's cool and the plant is full of sugars, putting the cut flowers immediately into water, cutting them underwater, and putting them into floral preservative water are the things that will make them last the longest. Be aware, cut flowers use a lot of water the first day or two, so check them that evening. And you may need to add, and now you just add fresh water to the vase. And if they're going to last a really long time, if you have something like orchids, which most places would not have been grown outdoors, you're going to want to change the water every 3 or 4 days because it gets kind of slimy and stuff grows in there. And you can cut new bottoms to the flowers at that time. And that will extend your floral bouquet in the house.
Does the temperature of the water matter? Should it be cold water, warm water, hot water?
Right, good question. The temptation with the floral preservative is to use hot water because it dissolves faster that way. But hot water is not a good thing for plants. So we just want it to be room temperature water. That would be the best.
What about the eventual length of the stem that you're going to put in the vase? Is there a general rule of thumb as far as how tall that stem should be compared to the size of the vase?
Well, when in design, there's a 2/3 rule, and it typically says that the container, and this is for potted plants as well, the container should be 1/3 of the height, and that also applies to floral arrangements, that the vase should be 1/3 the height of the finished floral arrangement. So the flowers would stick out twice, 2/3 of the way.
So, for instance, if the vase was 8 inches tall, you would want that stem to be a total of 24 inches long?
Yes. 8 plus 16, yes. Now, of course, I don't know about you, but I don't follow those rules if the flowers I'm being offered don't have stems that long. I don't have that choice, or I might not have the right vase. Don't fret if you don't have long enough flowers. But another thing I should mention is you should remove any leaves that are going to be in the water. Those are just going to rot and cause bad things to grow in the water. So take those off before putting the stems in the water.
And finally, best place to display plants. Should they be in a window, or can they be near a vent?
Yeah, some things are going to shorten the life of the flowers in a vase, and lots of air blowing on them is one of those things that will shorten their life. If they're on top of something hot, we used to recommend you not put them on top of the television, but televisions have gotten much skinnier, and so that's not likely to be a place where you would put them. But near some kind of a machine that gives off a lot of heat will shorten the amount of time you have that beautiful display. Blowing air will shorten that as well. Window doesn't really matter. These are no longer growing plants. If they can absorb some water in their vascular system, they're doing it, but they are not making food anymore. So window would be a great place if you like the light or the view or the picture it creates, but it's not required to keep the cut flowers alive.
Well, we learned about cut flowers. We always love to have Debbie Flower drop by and give us a quick tip or two. Thank you, Debbie.
My pleasure, Fred.
We're glad to have Smart Pots on board supporting the Garden Basics podcast. Smart Pots are the original award-winning fabric planter. They're sold worldwide. Smart Pots are proudly made 100% in the USA. I'm pretty picky about who I allow to advertise on this program. My criteria, though, is pretty simple. It has to be a product I like, a product I use, a product I would buy again. And Smart Pots clicks all those boxes. They're durable, they're reusable. Smart Pots are available at independent garden centers and select Ace and True Value stores nationwide. To find a store near you, visit smartpots.com/Fred. It's Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric planter. Go to smartpots.com/Fred for more info and that special Farmer Fred discount on your next Smart Pot purchase. Go to smartpots.com/Fred. Cold weather care for chickens. Now, out here in California, we don't have too much experience with that, so I thought we would talk to somebody who has to deal with it on a seasonal basis every year. We're talking to Nicole Janetta of heritageacresmarket.com, and she has an excellent website. She has a marketplace. She has a podcast as well. We'll find out about that, as well as chicken care in the wintertime and more. So, Nicole, first of all, welcome to the show, and please tell us about Heritage Acres Market.
Well, thank you so much, Fred. I really appreciate you having me on the show today. It's an honor. Heritage Acres is a online resource for hobby farmers. I kind of try to appeal to lots of different aspects of hobby farming, while my kind of specialty or expertise or focus, or whichever word you would like to use, is on backyard poultry and beekeeping. I do bring on some guests and talk about some other topics, things like gardening or different livestock or animal husbandry and a whole wide variety of topics.
So here it is. We're going into October. Let's start with chickens because I believe probably it's kind of like gardening in that you're going to have the best luck with plants that are native to your area. I would think that with chickens, you might be better off with having chickens that are acclimated naturally to colder weather.
Absolutely. So if you live somewhere that gets colder like we do, I would recommend when you're trying to figure out which breeds to add to your flock to choose ones that are more winter hardy. And a lot of hatcheries will be able to tell you that. There's so many different breeds and that you could choose from that it'd be hard to go through and list them all. But kind of some of the things to look for in a winter hardy breed are ones that have a small comb or a pea comb. You don't want one that has like a big giant comb like some of the leghorns might have. Ones that have, I would say, normal feathering. So you would want to try and avoid silkies or frizzles or kind of those specialty breeds because they don't have that good layer of down that can protect them in the cold months. And then sort of related is I would try to avoid having young birds during the cold winter months, ones that would need the supplemental heat. If you can get birds in the spring, and that way come wintertime, they're full grown and they can keep themselves warm, that would be better.
Now, what is interesting about your story is you're a retired firefighter, and part of your job when you were a firefighter was putting out chicken coop fires. So I imagine you're not too fond of heaters.
I'm not. I spent about 10 years of my life as a firefighter paramedic and recently left on a medical retirement following an on-the-job injury. But in my tenure there, we not only had chicken coop fires, but even full house fires because either a chicken coop was too close to the house and ended up catching the house on fire when they were using a heat lamp, or in one situation, a family had birds in the garage with a heat lamp. The heat lamp fell, caught the garage on fire, caught the house on fire. Fortunately, the humans were all unscathed, but can't say the same, unfortunately, for the birds. So I'm not a fan of heat lamps for a number of reasons. The obvious being the fire hazard. They are incredibly dangerous. There are some safer heat options. I would say that anytime you're running electricity and heat in a chicken coop, it's not going to be 100% fail safe. But if I could have one takeaway, it would just be to please avoid heat lamps because they are so dangerous. But also, even if you were to use a heat lamp and you weren't concerned about the fire hazard, which I feel like everybody should be. One of the other problems that people don't really realize is, let's say that we have a heat lamp in our chicken coop and the chicken coop is, 40 or 50 degrees because it's the middle of winter. If we get a winter snowstorm that comes in and we lose power, which is really common here in the Midwest, and that heat source goes out, that sudden change in temperature will more than likely unfortunately kill your entire flock because your flock hasn't acclimated to the cold temperatures. So going from 40 degrees to 0 or whatever it may be outside in just a short period of time during the power loss, that's really going to shock the birds, and it's definitely going to be an unfortunate outcome. So lots of reasons to avoid heat sources if at all possible.
I would think that people hearing this in colder climates saying, well, electricity goes out, not a problem. I'll use a propane heater. But I imagine that as an ex-firefighter, you would dissuade them from that.
Yeah, anything especially that has an open flame or, I've heard people putting those like oil heaters and stuff out there. I mean, it's all dangerous. Even if you think that it's an enclosed heat source and that it's not going to be a risk, you have to worry about mice chewing on cords or chickens knocking things over because they're clumsy and things like that. But if you absolutely have to use a heat source, let's say you live somewhere that normally has a mild winter, but you're getting just like a random cold snowstorm that's coming through, or maybe an early season cold snap like we just had here in Colorado recently. There is one product that I'm not affiliated with, but it's called a sweeter heater. And it's an enclosed infrared heater that, according to their website, they've never had a fire as a result of people using their product. So I would say that in an emergency, or, you know, if you had to use something, again, young birds in a early September snowstorm or something, that would be probably your safest option. But again, nothing is foolproof. There's always that potential.
As I'm fond of saying on the show, all gardening is local, and I guess all chickens are local too. So I guess the first good piece of advice to protect your chickens in cold weather is to choose those breeds that are built for cold weather.
Yeah, absolutely. Like touching again on what we were talking about earlier, small combs, small wattles, and I guess properly feathered, you know, not the decorative feathery ones like the silkies are definitely going to be your best. And then if you have a reputable breeder in your area, and I would emphasize the reputable, that kind of breeds some cold hardy or birds that are adapted more to your area. For example, we have a local breeder that breeds a variety of Easter eggers that have some smaller combs and wattles, so they're good for winter, but they're also more comfortable in the heat, because we do get some pretty extreme heats. Like 105 is not uncommon, so they're a good hardy breed for all seasons.
What about water? How do you keep water from freezing in the wintertime for the chickens?
Yeah, water is definitely a challenge. And when I first started keeping chickens, I some days I seriously contemplated whether or not this was for me, because I'm not particularly fond of the cold, and having to get up early before work and put on my snow gear and trudge out through the snow and break water and do that at least twice a day was not my favorite chore at all. And so I've had chickens now, well, really for most of my life, but in my adult life, I've had them for about 6 years now. And a couple years ago, I came across a product that has made chicken winter water so much easier. And I use it with all of my birds, whether it's the chickens or the turkeys, or even my pigeons use these. And they're side mount chicken nipples. And while they have a funny name, they're basically a watering device that screws into the side of a container. For my chickens, I use a 55-gallon drum, and for everybody else, I use 5-gallon buckets. And then in that container, I drop a submersible heater, and it works really great. I only have to fill up my chicken water now maybe once a month, usually more like once every 2 months or so. And because it's a completely enclosed system with those side mount nipples, there's no algae. The nipples themselves don't freeze. So I use the submersible heater to keep the actual water from freezing, but the nipples themselves don't freeze.
Yeah, I would imagine that any nipple that's horizontally mounted has less chance of freezing than one that's vertically mounted.
It does. So the horizontal one also, because of the way that it seals and it self-drains, it doesn't hold any water inside of the barrel or the nipple itself. Whereas those vertical ones, the ones that you see hanging from the bottom of a bucket, those keep water inside of them. So even if you used a submersible heater, that nipple that's sticking out of the bucket that's not being heated by that heater, they're going to end up freezing and breaking, because they do hold the water inside of them. And then, you know, there's some other watering options, the traditional water that you see, kind of that open dish with the reservoir or the cups. But I really don't like those because they freeze. The chickens tend to break those cups. They hold dirt and algae, and they're also not, they can kind of promote the spread of disease because it's that open watering system. And if one bird that might be ill drinks out of that, then they put bacteria in there that all of the other birds are going to drink out. So that the other birds are going to also consume and could risk spreading illness. Whereas those horizontal nipples, they're they keep the water enclosed. So when one bird drinks out of it, the water comes out. And then when they're done drinking, the water stops. So you're not going to risk that spread of disease either.
I noticed on your website that you have something that really intrigues me, and that's grow your own food for your chickens. You have a seed blend.
I do. It's our essential nutrients seed blend, and I like to use that year round with our chickens. In the summer, what I'll do is I'll build a 2x4 planter basically in their coop and fill it with dirt and put wire on top of it. And I plant that seed blend, and whatever sticks out above the wire, the chickens can peck at, but they can't dig it and mess it up because the wire that's on top. And that seed blend's really nice because did a lot of research when putting that together, and it provides some omega-3s and micronutrients like vitamins A and E that can be lacking in the traditional manufactured food that we feed the chickens. And, not everybody can free range their birds. So this is a really good way to kind of give them a treat, but also give them some additional vitamins and things that they enjoy. And in the winter, I'll grow it in either a planter or in a flat, and then I'll trim the tops off and go give them a handful. And then in a couple days, it'll have grown some more. And it's just kind of a repeating process. And it's a really good kind of treat and a little addition to their diet that they really enjoy.
What kind of wire covering it's not chicken wire, I wouldn't think.
No, the chicken wire, you can use that, but it doesn't work too well because it tends to sag. So I really like to use hardware cloth for really everything with chickens. So it's just a 1/2-inch hardware cloth over the top, and it works great. It keeps them from messing it up, and they can just peck at it all day.
Yeah, I would think, too, that you could control digging critters that might try to get into a chicken coop by putting that 1/2-inch hardware cloth beneath your chicken coop as well.
Yeah, and I actually don't put it beneath the chicken coop, but what I do is I use that hardware cloth to make a skirt around the perimeter of the outside so that anything digging can't dig into it. And we have a lot of issues with predators, from coyotes to hawks and owls and even badgers, snakes. I haven't seen any foxes yet, and we don't really have any bears, but that hardware cloth really works well to keep especially like dogs and stuff from digging in. They hit that wire and eventually they just give up because they can't get through.
You have a lot at heritageacresmarket.com, and you have a chicken newsletter, I hear.
I do. So we have a chicken newsletter that we provide seasonal tips. So I have one that's getting ready to come out in about a week for winter chicken care, actually. And it has a number of resources and things like that. And if anybody would like to sign up for that, they can just text the word chickens to 44222, and that way you can just put in your email address and get signed up. Or if you are not so tech savvy, you can also go just to the website and sign up for our newsletter there as well.
heritageacresmarket.com. A lot of interesting things available at your website, too. You got books, you've got clothing, and you have bee gear closeout sale going on.
Yeah, I have a variety of products on there. The bee gear closeout is just some products that I had, so they're kind of one and done. Once they're sold out, they're gone, and we're getting a little low on stock there. But kind of probably our two most popular products would be the Backyard Poultry Health Guide, which is an ebook. It's about 60 pages long, and it covers a lot of the common chicken ailments and their diagnosis and treatment, and some kind of home remedies and things. So not everybody has access to a poultry vet, and this isn't necessarily meant to take away from a vet, but maybe you just need some help with a sick chicken, and hopefully that can offer you some suggestions and guidance. And then the poultry nipples that I mentioned earlier, I actually do sell those on my website. I'm really proud to offer the original ones that are made in Europe. I import them from Denmark, and they're the original ones. They've been on the market for chickens for about 10 years, but the company's been making them for about 25 years. and they're really high quality. They're made in Denmark, and I offer a lifetime leak-free guarantee on them. And any other poultry nipple, side mount poultry nipple that you would purchase from anybody else, except for Heritage Acres, we also offer them on Amazon. But any of the other sellers, they're made in China, and there is a noticeable difference in quality. So I'm really proud to be able to offer the premium quality with a lifetime leak-free guarantee, so that poultry owners can know that they have the best for their flock.
And for homesteaders, even if you're raising chickens or bees or whatever, or gardening, you have a great podcast, the Backyard Bounty Podcast.
I do. The Backyard Bounty Podcast covers a lot of topics. I like to invite people on the show that have expertise in things that I don't know about. And so then we can all learn together. So I have a whole variety of different guests, from university researchers, honeybee researchers, to people that raise ducks commercially. I've got some folks that have a sugar bush for maple syrup. I've got a gentleman that's supposed to be on here in a bit that talks about raising buffalo. And hopefully we can have you on the show here soon to talk some about gardening.
Great. Maybe I can talk about growing organic heirloom popcorn.
Oh, that would be fun.
We're just about out of time here, so we're going to have Nicole back to talk about winter bee care, and we'll talk more about heritageacresmarket.com as well. And Nicole, thank you so much for a few minutes of your time.
Absolutely. It was an absolute pleasure, and I really appreciate you having me on the show, and I look forward to being back on again sometime soon.
The Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast has a lot of information posted at each episode. Transcripts, links to any products or books mentioned during the show, and other helpful links for even more information. Plus, you can listen to just the portions of the show that interest you. It's been divided into easily accessible chapters. And you'll find more information about how to get in touch with us. We have links to all our social media outlets, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Also, a link to the farmerfred.com website. That's where you can find out more information about the radio shows. You remember radio, right? Now, if the place where you access the podcast doesn't have that information, you can find it all at our home podcaster, Buzzsprout, buzzsprout.com. Just look for the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. You'll find a link to it in the show notes. Garden Basics comes out every Tuesday and Friday, and it's available just about anywhere podcasts are handed out, and that includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and hey Alexa, play the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, would you please? Thank you for listening, subscribing, and leaving comments. We appreciate it.